Welcome, episode 3, Extracreditpodcast. It's been a few weeks, but through some upgrades, hopefully audio and lighting, we are back at it, improving and simply just, doing a better job with the podcast, taking it more seriously. So, for this episode, we wanted to talk about passions more. Last episode,
Briefly, we talked about it.
Yeah, we talked about the link between passions and dyslexia and how our school focuses on, your passions and your interests and stuff. And in this episode, I want to talk about, how we actually
incorporated it.
Yeah, take those passions, take whatever you're interested in, whatever we want to learn, create activities, how we fit it into our schedule, and all of that sort of stuff, right?
Yeah.
So, let's just jump right in, right?
Yeah.
Okay. How you feeling?
Good.
I'm feeling good too. I know the audio is going to be super crispy.
I know.
These are some nice mics.
I know. We dropped a bag on these things
We definitely did drop a good amount on these mics, but that's just an investment in this podcast, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you could tell lighting is better too, so we're definitely making upgrades for sure. Taking this seriously.
The next step is a set.
I mean, the next episode's going to be... No, the 5th episode.
Yeah.
It's going to be a pretty nice set.
Yeah.
We have a special guest. Technically our first guest.
And we have good lighting for that one.
We're going to have a good lighting, a good set, our first guest, and then the 2 podcasts after that one are going to be pretty interesting too.
Across the country. Sneak peek.
All right. So, that's going to be some interesting episodes in the loop. All right. So let's jump right in, right?
Yeah.
So the question is then, we figured out your passions. We briefly talked about how, your natural strengths are building using your hands, right? Mm-hmm. Then we talked about how you love mountain biking.
Mm-hmm.
So, what did we make of that? How did we take those 2 things and center our school around them?
I actually have to think now. Okay.
Let's start from the beginning. Because I think following the evolution would be a cool idea. Giving people a sort of an idea of how we went from
I know, I'm just trying to think how we
focusing on a lot of fundamentals to then slowly incorporating things we're interested in to where we're at now, where it's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
Well, I guess, to start off with, right? When you and I first started working together...
You thought biking was going to be a joke.
Well, I'm going to get to that.
I had a lot of passions at that point.
You went through a lot of passions for sure.
I had fireworks, which was very illegal.
That was an interesting passion.
We drove
across state lines to get fireworks.
That was a fun one. What else did I do?
I was going to start with the train project. Remember that?
Yeah.
So I want to define passion and interest, and then natural born strength. I think there's a distinction between those 3. So natural born strength is your ability to create, right?
And what you're also interested in.
Sort of, yeah.
And that just comes kind of natural to you.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I feel naturally, I'm just a very empathetic person. Yeah. I'm a very good people's person.
I'm also good at writing.
And I feel that manifests itself as teaching.
Teacher, yeah.
So teaching is one of my passions. I love working out too, and I can train people well because it's basically teaching also.
It doesn't feel required. It feels enjoyable.
It's very enjoyable. So your natural born strength then is creating with your hands, and I think it manifests into biking.
Other things biking. Yeah.
Like biking, right? Fireworks too. You created this sort of show.
Yeah.
It's very you had to use your hands.
Yeah.
The boosted board was an interesting little phase, but again, still semi-technical because it's electronics and whatnot. And then even Photoshop and video editing, you're still building and creating, but through the computer.
Yeah.
Right. So if we trace back all your passions,
it's all rooted in that building.
Exactly. So natural born strength is what you're great at. I love being active, but I'm just not naturally an athlete. I've tried, right? And that's fine. That doesn't mean I can't do it.
Yeah.
Right. It just means that
you have to work for it.
I'd have to work incredibly hard, which is a whole different story, right?
Yeah.
So you have your natural born strengths. You've had clearly tons of passions, and then interests are just
things I enjoy,
but they're not as serious as a mountain biking or something else. So when we first started working together,
right now, working out's an interest.
Definitely
for me.
It could turn into a passion one day, but it doesn't matter.
It's an interest. I'm not being forced to do it, but I choose to do it. But it doesn't just come naturally to me.
Absolutely, rock climbing is an interest for me. right? I'm not trying to be a professional, and it's not technically my natural born strength, right? But I just like doing it. It's fun. Skateboarding as well, same thing. It's just a fun interest I have.
Yeah.
Right. So let's trace it back to the beginning. So we first started out, I was your tutor.
Yes.
After quarantine hit.
Yeah.
And our first project was that train project. Remember
Exposing the MTA.
Yeah, literally putting the MTA on blast and exposing them. Yeah. So basically we took this idea you had to redefine and redo the whole entire MTA system.
Yeah.
Right, we're talking about like a whole new train system, being on time, how to
train stations,
how to get around better.
Yeah.
And we basically just worked on that for like 5 months.
I just remember what that project was.
Right, I kind of forgot about it until this moment too. Well, your dad brought it up to me the other day, and I was like, wow, I totally forgot we did that.
Well, I remember the project. I didn't remember what it was about.
He also brought up the Hawthorne Valley.
I remember that one. I still have it.
Yeah, he brought that one up too.
If you look in my, like, where I sit in that, like, wooden container, it's still sitting there.
You have your notes and whatnot? Yeah, that was interesting.
Yeah.
So when I was tutoring him, I wanted to work on like his reading, his writing, his speaking.
Once again, we never actually really practiced like reading.
We never like sat there and did like out of like comprehension books.
Yeah, no, we never actually
did it through your passion, right? So I wanted to practice all those skills, but I also wanted school to be fun for you. So we took this thing you're interested in, this weird MTA train project, and we literally did so much reading and research, did so much writing. We did a legitimate, like a 25-minute presentation on it.
Yeah.
Right, we learned how to present.
We did a 25-minute presentation?
Like we did it together, but you did the actual presentation. Yes. I just helped you. So that was, again, technically rooted in your natural strength because
it was
designing, creating, you made blueprints, it was this whole crazy thing. And then that passed, which was fine. And then the next thing came.
Yeah.
What was your next interest? Wasn't it the DC motor, right? Wasn't that the thing we did?
We did motors, yeah.
We did motors like all throughout 9th grade, basically.
I was 8th grade.
8th grade, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, last year was a lot of video editing and Photoshop.
Yeah, it was video editing and involving mountain bikes too, because we did Goof Flow for a little bit.
Totally. Okay, so let's just get back to 8th grade. So that was the
motors.
In the limbo period. All of 8th grade was our first year. We built the DC motor.
DC motor. We also started engines and
we did the e-bike.
Yeah, we did do that.
Right.
And then we also did just like gas engines.
We did do combustion engines for a little bit. So the point was that the subway thing came and went, right? And I used that to our advantage. Like we did this awesome project, again, practicing reading, writing. We even studied some physics and chemistry a little bit to learn about like
like leverage ratios and all that stuff.
Totally.
How much torque you would need and all that stuff. Yeah.
And then 8th grade rolls around. We're still practicing fundamentals, but...
What do you mean 9th grade?
Well, 8th grade was when we did the DC motor.
It was?
Yeah. 9th grade is like a lot of computer stuff. Yeah. So 8th grade rolls around. That was like the limbo period, end of 7th grade, a little bit into the summer.
We're still figuring it out.
Still figuring everything out. Then 8th grade, we do the motor. Right, so we spend that whole year learning everything we could possibly learn about DC and AC motors.
And combustion
engines. And then we spent weeks buying... remember we bought that little really simple one?
Oh, the kit, yeah.
The kit one. Then I had my dad made us that... Remember that little diagram? And he taught us for a couple classes. He came in.
Yeah, your dad taught us.
My dad came in and taught us. He's like a master with engines also. Again... researching, reading articles, and watching lots of videos, writing, doing little mini presentations here and there on this stuff. So I guess the moral here is like, how did we incorporate your interests? Well, we figured them out. I asked you a million times. We spent hours talking.
The life of
we had to
interest out of me.
We had to though.
Yeah.
And I think that's key. Is like you can't just like spend one little time asking it. Like you can't be like, oh. Little Johnny, what are you interested in?
If it immediately comes to you, it's not a real interest. I think
partially, yes.
It takes time.
I think
to find something you're really passionate about.
You have to. We experimented with a lot of random stuff, and we did like a couple classes here, and then that kind of fizzled out. A couple classes on one thing, and that fizzled out.
For some point, we did. You wanted to do like, I guess a health class.
Yeah. We learned about the brain for a little bit.
Yeah, but
food
that filled out pretty fast.
And then I'd say the only class I forced you to do is the philosophy one. which I don't think was that awful.
It was just once a week.
It was only once a week.
Wasn't that painful?
So I think the moral here, though, is that, like, because remember, we would spend like 2 hours of class times of us just sitting there, kind of arguing, being like, well, what are you interested in? What are you interested in? And I had to like really squeeze it out of you. Yeah. But when I finally squeezed it out of you,
it was something I actually liked.
We were able to do something so amazing. Yeah. So I think
it wasn't like half. We went full.
No, we went fully into it, full steam ahead. So I think the first step would be like, you can't just ask in passing. You have to like spend
That's what I'm saying. It doesn't just immediately come to you.
No, you have to like, I mean, look, some of them did.
Yeah.
Right? Because cooking's always been an interest of yours. Yeah. And we've done those cool history cooking projects. Yeah, definitely. I think it worked out because we had a shared interest.
I was also kind of forced to cook for myself, but...
Well, yeah, that's a different story. We can take that up with your special guest next week or whatever. Okay. So, step 1 would be really, really spend a lot of time figuring it out. And then step 2 would be just immerse yourself in it. Like, I didn't really know anything about DC motors, but we learned together. Yeah. I think that's kind of like the beautiful thing is that...
You learn.
You don't have to know everything going into it. Yeah. Like, you'll razz me all the time because I don't know it, and I Google it, and that's fine, but we're learning together, right? And I think that's kind of like a great bonding experience is that, you know, teachers come to class, students come to class, and...
expecting the teacher to know it all and the student not to know.
Not to know anything, right? And then I just feel like you're missing out on so much bonding and so much, like, growth together when... I'm genuinely interested in the things you're genuinely interested in, and then we can...
It's not even in just teaching.
What? It's just like a life thing.
Yeah, it's just like somebody comes in the bike shop, they just expect me to know everything, like I'm the teacher, basically. Uh-huh. So it's like, it's all life.
I think so. I mean, I wish, you know, someone would come into the bike shop genuinely curious about bikes. That'd be pretty cool. But, you know, that's a perfect world.
Life doesn't always work the way you want it
to. You're getting paid, so they expect you just to know everything. Yeah. But that's a different story. Yeah. So I think that's like step 2 is like you can't just like send your child or your student on their way, right? You
have to immerse everybody in it.
You have to go in there with them. You have to be there with them in those early stages where like, you know, it's kind of overwhelming. Yeah. There were many times I was making those lessons of the DC motor where I had like panic attacks because I'm like, I don't know how to do this. That's why I had my dad come in and teach us because quite literally I couldn't have done that, right? So, but that's fine though because we got to go through that experience together.
Yeah, it was like you were learning too.
I was learning too. You got to see me vulnerable, which I think is a good teaching lesson in that it's okay to just be a learner, right? I'm a learner all the time, even though I'm supposed to be the teacher who knows everything supposedly. So step 1, spend a lot of time asking. Step 2, fully immerse yourself. And then I think step 3 would be like, just have fun experimenting. Yeah. Right? So we bought that cheap little motor set from China.
Also, the first thing you try is not going to be what you want.
Oh, definitely not. You told me that.
So much trial and error.
I've heard you say a few times that this was going to be the thing.
What have I said that about?
Fireworks. You said that about boosted board. I'd say that was like the only 2, really.
They had potential. They just weren't sustainable.
Uh-huh. I mean, how far can you really go
Legitimately,
with those 2?
Fireworks were not sustainable.
Like, what are you going to do? Your dad wanted you to make, like, an eco-friendly firework. Do you remember that?
That wasn't going to happen.
No, that wasn't going to happen. So, I'd say...
That's the fun of them. You're ruining the planet.
I mean...
Cut that out.
Nah, I'm going to clip that, bro. I'm clipping that. The freaking climate change people are going to come for you. You're done for. So, yeah, that's how we took your So, your passions, I feel like, are long-term, right? Yes. Like, the DC motor was a long-term project, and then we interspersed little interests here and there. Like, we did the cooking project sometimes. We did the chemistry stuff for a little bit.
Yeah, we did that.
Before we got bored of that. So, I would say, like, any teachers or parents watching this, my advice to you would be squeeze as much as you can out of the interest. Right? And that's fine. Like the momentary interest, do as much as you can. Once they start to get bored, just move on. Yeah. Right? The passion, do the reverse. Yeah. Try to keep that as sustainable as long term. Like we did a little bit. We took a little break from the DC motor, then we came back to it. I just remembered. Remember we made the vegan patties? Yeah. That was one project we did too.
That was indeed one project.
I feel like that was like one of the first major...
That was our first major project.
Grade 8 project we did, aside from
you to eat vegan meat.
The train. See, that's another thing. Is like, He happened to be like a vegan vegetarian at the time. I'm a staunch meat eater, but I did it for him. And that's just, sometimes we have to make sacrifices. But I did it. I don't think of it as a sacrifice. I think of it as, you were really into it. I was very happy you were interested in something. So of course I'm going to support it. And we like researched for weeks how to make like recipe. We made our own recipe.
Not gonna lie, it was better than most stuff on the market.
Legitimately, yeah.
It wasn't that bad.
It was pretty banging.
It wasn't that bad.
It's pretty good. So yeah, we did the train project. Then we did that. Then we did the DC motor.
Yeah.
Then we did the e-bike. Then we were gonna do the combustion.
DC motor was before.
Yeah, before the e-bike.
It was, or e-bike was before.
No, the e-bike we did at the end of the year. Remember?
That was summertime.
It was like the summertime-ish. Yeah. Then we were going to do a combustion engine. We researched how to do the go-kart.
Yeah.
But that just kind of fell through.
Still in the works.
Still, we're not giving up.
We're not giving up yet.
Then 9th grade, again, start of the year, I asked him. I was like, so what are we doing this year? Squeezed it out of him. Premiere Pro, right? Video editing software.
Well, I was already doing that because I was doing that on that side school thing I was doing.
Yeah, but I took it to the next level.
Yeah.
And again, I didn't know anything about Adobe Premiere Pro. I immersed myself in it.
I was teaching you.
He was teaching me, exactly.
Yeah.
Then we did Photoshop. So we did those two.
We did Photoshop. Then me and you actually together learned Adobe Premiere.
And we learned Adobe Premiere. Well, you taught me as much as you could teach me.
Well, no, remember, I didn't know anything about Adobe.
Oh, you taught me Photoshop.
Yeah, I taught you Photoshop, and then we learned Adobe Premiere together.
And then we learned Premiere together. And then, I mean, we still use that.
Yeah.
For the most part. I mean, I don't really edit my own videos now. Thank you, Alex. Shout out. And you just haven't been, you're going to pick it up soon. But it doesn't matter, though. The point is that I think people get too wrapped up in like, oh, they're not going to do this forever, so why am I going to waste time? I don't see it as wasting time because when you're immersed in the momentary interest or passion, again, we're learning math. We're learning science. We're learning physics. We've read, wrote, comprehended. So I'm practicing all the standard fundamentals through the passion and the interest.
Through interesting things, not in a boring sense.
Yeah, right. I mean, obviously...
That's part of the problem with, like... I don't really know what normal school is because I've never done normal school. But I guess you could just... It's boring because there's nothing interesting about it. You know what I mean?
I mean... Look, in normal school's defense, when you have a class of 30 or 40, it's quite literally impossible for them to do what we do. So I think that's a whole different conversation of itself where, like, how do you make this sustainable? That's what people always ask me. And I think we have to just change our whole perspective on education. Yeah. We have to change literally the entire structure of education, which...
It's a whole different thing.
Massive undertaking, I'm not going to lie, right? Yeah. But that's a different conversation. So for those that homeschool, or even, like, I actually wanted to touch upon this. Like, even if your kid goes to a public school, you can have them do stuff like this in the afternoons, and you can have them do stuff like this on the weekends.
It's feasible.
So much of the stuff that we just talked about, you did outside of our school hours on your own. And you still did other schooling in the afternoon, right? So you did this, like, on the evenings, on the weekends.
And also, we're not doing this in, like, a 12-hour school day. This is a 4-hour school day that we're doing.
We have a 4-hour school day, and then you have lots of free time on your own, where, like, I gave you structure and just, like,
I did Photoshop. I built stuff.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't even talked about bikes yet.
Yeah.
So then, to finish what you were just saying is, like, we had all these awesome ongoing projects, 4 or 5 projects at once that we just kind of had throughout the year that you just worked on in your free time. Yeah. And it didn't feel like homework. No. It didn't feel like a struggle or forced because you enjoyed it.
But it was homework.
Technically, yes.
If you can believe it, homework can be interesting.
It can be. I don't even like to call it homework, but it's like work outside of our school hours. Again, most of this is not done during our 4-hour block.
Yeah.
We spent most of that time researching, and of course, some hands-on stuff. It's hard over.
Also, you do have boring stuff in there.
Yeah.
It's hard to make math interesting.
Yeah, of course it is.
But yeah.
I mean, a lot of people would disagree.
You gonna tell me algebra is interesting?
A lot of people would disagree with me, and because I'm not like a math teacher by trade, perhaps I just can't make it as interesting. But you know, perhaps someone else can make math more interesting.
I don't think so.
That's fine. So we cycled through all those interests we just said, all those passions. again, still, even the burger, we're creating something with our hand.
Yep.
We're thinking.
Yep.
DC, we're creating, the DC motor.
Yep.
E-bike, we're creating. Photoshop, Adobe Premiere, we're creating. Science experiments, we're creating something. Now we get the bikes. And that's like been the final frontier. I mean, you just...
What haven't we done?
We've done... I mean, you've built the jumps and stuff in your backyard.
Yeah.
For starters. That was a long-term project.
It's still going.
You were going to do the Antigua Bikes thing, right? The charity project, which fell through. Not your fault.
Still might happen.
Still might happen.
There's a lot of stuff that's open.
And then just buying bikes, working on bikes, learning videos. I mean, again, we could go on and on and on.
I didn't learn how to work on bikes from anybody teaching me. I learned from breaking stuff.
Yeah, of course. That's sometimes the best.
I learned how to work on brakes by breaking my brake.
By breaking them,
I said
right?
brakes like 12 times there.
Breaking the brakes.
Yeah, there you go.
So, and look, I always tell that, like I say this, if next month you gave up bikes for good, which you're obviously not going to do, the next thing would happen, right? But your natural strength of building and creating would just manifest.
It's still going to fall over to something else.
100%. And a lot of people give me pushback on that.
But everybody has that thing. It doesn't always have to be building. That's my thing.
I feel like I'm a people's person.
Yeah, everybody has that like certain kind of genre that they have.
Their thing.
Yeah.
Their thing. I feel like your dad's skill is a people's person also. Yeah. He's really good at and then my dad's an engineer, right? So he creates. My mom is a people's person, right? My younger sister likes to make clothing. She's a creator. What are you doing?
I'm just going to hit that, but I'm not going to do it.
And then my older sister, right? She's really analytical and she's very, very, very smart.
Yeah.
And then, some people, LeBron James is a basketball player, right? So
sports.
It manifests somehow, some way.
Yes.
So people give me pushback though, and they're like, well, aren't you forcing him to do stuff with his hands? And it's like, no. If you just listen to everything I just said, it's all rooted in your hands. And I
go in the room next to me. That's actually a great example. When I painted that.
Yeah. We should at one, maybe in a future pod. Show the room. Like, I didn't force you to do anything.
No.
You chose every single one of those activities, and they just so happen to all include your hands, right?
Yes.
No. They included your hands because...
That's what I like.
When I say natural born strength, the implication there is that you love doing that.
And it's also just kind of natural to me. I don't have to
exactly.
think about it.
Like, I've
kind of become numb to that, too. As you say, like, you give me way more credit than I like to give myself.
Well, again, just like when you say I'm a good writer or good at teaching, it's just second nature to me. I don't think about it, right? And
you're a good writer.
To me, it's whatever.
I know, but you are.
Like, I've taught skateboarding before. I've taught, personal training type stuff. This is teaching, obviously. Yeah. My, people type skills always manifest somehow. You know what I mean? And... I don't think I'm forcing you.
Weird.
I think they just come out, right?
Definitely.
So, I mean, I guess to bring this to a close would be, to recap the steps would be, truly spend a lot of time figuring them out, immerse yourself with them, right? Give them the space, get creative, allow them to experiment however they want, and also... Your dad, really facilitated that experimentation.
That's a big part. People around you need to facilitate
100%.
What your interests.
Absolutely. I mean, your dad just helped us with whatever we wanted. He's different,
but...
You can do it to some degree, no matter what.
You can do it yourself, but also you do need people around you, too.
What I mean is, no one has to be as extreme as your dad. There's levels to it, of course.
That's what I'm saying. Also, but somebody can slightly push you, and then you can get that yourself.
Totally.
It's hard, but you can do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's I could climb Mount Everest, but it's hard, but I could do it.
I mean, you could do it. Maybe we should do it. We'll do a podcast.
$75,000 laying around to climb Mount Everest?
I could get it if Mount Everest was on the table. So to recap, end the podcast, right?
Yes.
Spend a lot of time and sit with your kid, your student, whatever, right?
Yep.
Whoever you're working with. Really find out what their passions, their interests are.
Yep.
Next step would be immersion with them. You got to be there with them in those early stages.
Get as much into it as you can.
Yeah, because if you're there supporting them, it's just going to increase
Accelerate it.
Exactly. Increase the chances of them succeeding. the next step would be just to continue experimenting, continue going with those curiosities, and then just, cycle through stuff. Don't hold on to one thing because they were into it. Don't force it. Allow things to come and go. And I think this one's important too. Just, embrace the thing that is here in the moment.
Also have fun with it.
That's what exactly. I embraced fireworks with you and let you have fun with it. Now, it doesn't seem like that's educational on the surface, but it is.
Yeah.
Right? Because like we explained, there's reading, research, everything else. So I would say that's sort of like taking your passions and interests.
And making it fun.
Making them fun, bringing it to school.
Yeah.
Right? Do you have anything else to say?
I think that's pretty good.
All right. That was episode 3. Thank you for watching. And we'll see you for episode 4. Signing off.